All right, welcome in everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into London's fashion scene. You know, that global fashion hub buzzing with creativity. We know you're interested in finding photographers and filmmakers in London, especially for fashion film work. And that's why we're diving deep into the cost of hiring a fashion photographer right here in London, so get ready.
Well, London has such a unique blend of tradition and trend setting. You know, that classic tailoring meets avant-garde designs, a place where history and modernity collide. It makes it a rich and dynamic landscape for fashion and film.
Totally. And speaking of talent, we have to highlight Calvin Chinthaka. He's a fashion photographer in London doing some really incredible editorial and commercial work. His portfolio is just high fashion, which is perfect for what you're looking for. Make sure to check out his website later on for some inspiration. But okay, let's get down to it. How much does it actually cost to hire a fashion photographer in London?
Well, just like any creative field, the cost can vary a lot depending on a few things.
So it's more than just saying it's going to cost me X amount. There are nuances to consider, right?
For sure. One of the biggest factors is the photographer's experience. So a student or a newer photographer who's building their portfolio might charge between like £50 and £150 per hour.
That makes sense. They're getting experience as they go.
Right. Then you have your more mid-level photographers who have a more established portfolio and client base. They're typically going to charge around £150 to £500 an hour. And then at the very top, you have your highly sought-after photographers whose work is all over the magazines. They can charge £500 to £2,000 an hour.
Wow. Okay, so experience level really does play a huge role in the cost. But what about the type of project? I can't imagine a simple portrait session costs the same as a full-blown fashion campaign, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The scope of the project is another critical factor. So, are we talking an editorial shoot for a magazine? That could cost you anywhere from £1,000 to £10,000, depending on how complex it is, you know, how many looks are involved. Or maybe you're looking for e-commerce photography to showcase products for like an online shop. Those usually range from £500 to £5,000 per day, depending on how many products you have and the number of shots you need.
Okay, so editorial and e-commerce have very different price ranges. What about like a lookbook or a fashion campaign?
Those are definitely on the higher end. You're probably looking at £2,000 to upwards of £20,000 for those, depending on the creative vision, the number of models, locations, you know, the whole production.
So many moving parts. It's almost like planning a wedding. You have the venue, the outfits, the photography style, it all adds up.
That's a great analogy. Just like a wedding, it's all about knowing your priorities and finding that balance between your vision and your budget.
That's perfect. We've talked experience level and project scope, but what about location? Does shooting in London add to the cost at all?
Yeah, it really can. London's a prime location, but that comes at a price. You have studio rentals, travel costs, permits for outdoor shoots. All those can really add up. You're looking at another £500 to £5,000 at least.
Wow, so it's not just the photographer's fee. There's so much behind the scenes stuff that impacts the cost.
Right, and we can't forget about all those other services that go into a fashion shoot. Those are super important.
Oh, yeah. Like what? Tell me more.
Well, first you have styling and makeup. A professional stylist and makeup artist can cost anywhere from £200 to £1,000 per person per day. Then there's equipment rental, so like high-end cameras, lighting rigs, props. That could be another £100 to £1,000. And then last but not least, there's post-processing. That can be anywhere from £50 to £500 per image.
It's like piecing together a puzzle. All these different pieces come together to create the final product.
Yeah.
It really is like planning a wedding.
It is. And just like wedding planning, clear communication and careful planning are key. One big thing is the shoot length, which can be anything from a few hours to a whole day depending on how complex the project is. It's super important to talk with your photographer and, you know, make sure you're both on the same page to avoid any surprises later on.
Makes sense. Now, what if you're working with a smaller project or a limited budget? Is it still possible to work with a fashion photographer in London without breaking the bank?
Oh, for sure. Many photographers will create like custom packages for smaller projects. Don't be afraid to reach out and talk about your needs. You might be surprised at how flexible things can be.
That's good to know. Okay, and speaking of details, what about things like travel and accommodation? Are those typically included in a photographer's rate?
That's a good question. Usually travel and accommodation are considered like extra costs, so it's important to make sure you talk about that stuff early on to avoid any confusion later.
So many things to think about. Research is really important.
Oh, totally. Before jumping into fashion photography in London, you have to do your homework. Explore different portfolios, get quotes from a few different photographers, and just be super clear about what you need and what you expect. That'll help you find the right photographer to bring your vision to life.
And speaking of portfolios, let's go back to Calvin Chinthaka for a minute. I'm looking at his website now, and his work is seriously impressive. He really captures the energy and style of London.
He does. What's so cool about his work is how he balances his skills with his artistic vision. You
Mhm.
can tell he understands light, composition, and how to get emotion through his photography.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to play around with different styles and techniques. You can see his versatility. He's able to adapt to different brands and ideas.
Exactly. He's worked on everything, from streetwear to high fashion. His work has this really distinct London feel to it, capturing the city's grittiness and glamour in such an authentic way.
I totally agree. For anyone searching for a fashion photographer in London, Calvin's portfolio is a must-see. He's a great example of the talent in this city.
And remember, finding the right photographer is kind of like finding a dance partner. It's about connecting, communicating, and sharing a creative vision. When all those things come together, the result can be amazing.
I love that. But let's not forget about fashion film. It's an incredible medium, especially in London, which is full of stories to tell.
Oh, yeah. Fashion film takes storytelling to a whole new level. It's about capturing movement, emotion, and creating an experience that goes beyond just photos. It's like creating a mini movie for a brand or a collection.
In London, with its diverse culture and iconic locations, it's like the perfect setting for fashion film. It's like the city becomes a character in the story.
Exactly. London's streets are like this mix of fashion, history, and architecture. They just offer so many possibilities for creativity. When you're choosing a filmmaker, look for someone who gets that. Someone who can capture the energy of London and turn it into a visual story.
It's not just about technical skills. It's about finding someone who gets your brand and the city, someone who can bring it all together.
Right. It's about finding that creative synergy.
Absolutely. When you're looking for filmmakers in London, explore their show reels, see if their style matches yours. Do they lean towards edgy and urban or classic and elegant?
These are all good questions to think about. And don't be afraid to reach out and have a conversation, ask them questions. It's about building a rapport and making sure you're both on the same page creatively.
So it really is like matchmaking. You're searching for that connection to create something really special.
You got it. It's a collaboration. And like with anything, it needs communication, respect, and shared passion for it all to work.
And on that note, let's talk about the practical side of things. Being upfront about your budget and your expectations before jumping into anything.
Yeah, transparency from the get-go makes everything smoother. Nobody wants to have awkward money conversations later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So know what you can afford and what you want before reaching out to anyone. It's like having a roadmap for this whole creative journey. You know where you're starting and where you want to end up.
I like that. And don't be scared to ask questions, If you're not sure about anything, just ask. Most photographers and filmmakers are happy to explain their process, their pricing, how they work.
Yeah, it's all about feeling comfortable and excited to start this creative journey with them. And when you find that person, that partner who really gets you and your vision, it could be magic.
Oh, it can.
Yeah.
Imagine your brand coming to life through an amazing film set against London's iconic spots. That's the power of vision, expertise, and a deep love for the city, all coming together.
It's about capturing the energy, the style, and the stories that make London such a fashion capital. So for anyone ready to jump into this world, remember to embrace it all. Trust your gut, and don't be afraid to think differently.
Yeah, this city thrives on those bold new ideas. Embrace the unexpected. You might even find yourself working with someone like Calvin Chinthaka, who really gets what London's fashion is all about.
I love that. London lets you push boundaries, experiment, create something truly unique. So go out there and let your creative vision shine. The world's waiting to see it.